Hey guys, welcome to another Double Tap on YouTube. I am Stephen Scott.
And I am Shaun Preece. Hello.
Hello, Shaun Preece. How are you this fine day? How are you in yourself?
Oh, wow. Small talk. I like it. Let's banter. Yeah, I'm not so bad. Let's get on with it.
Fine. So games, accessibility, I'm all in. You know what? Remember last time we talked, I was asking you, is it time to buy a gaming console? I'm still on the fence, if I'm honest with you. I'm still like, okay, do I go down the route of PlayStation? Do I go down the route of Xbox? I just don't know what to buy. There's too much choice. What do I do, Shaun Preece?
Well, I mean, I think you just keep holding off and holding off. We're still waiting for that point where it tips over to most games are accessible, aren't we? I know we talked about, as you said, is it time to get a gaming console? Because the actual consoles themselves, PlayStation, Xbox, they're accessible at a system level. I mean, you could use them as a media player, for example, right? They've all got a built-in screen reader of some sort, which is fine. And some people do just use them for Blu-ray or whatever it may be, or at least they used to. But when it comes to the actual games themselves, I'm still hesitant. I still don't think we're at a point where I can say, I can buy a game and hopefully there'll be accessibility features in there. The majority of them still don't. I believe, anyway. I'm still at that mindset.
I think I'm getting to the stage, though, I want to try some of these games because the experience, I suppose I've often felt, what's the point? Because I'm going to get, say, 30% of the experience that someone who's fully sighted might get. That's my view on it, right? Without trying these games, I'm not saying that is the experience. Of course, that's just my view on this.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking about it from a purchasing point of view. If I'm going to spend the money on a console, I want to make sure I'm going to get a decent amount of enjoyment out of it. And it's intriguing listening to people who are playing these games every day to learn about what they can actually achieve. And we're going to play some clips in today of conversations we've been having over the past few months on this very topic. And I bring it up today specifically because we're in the week where the Game Accessibility Conference is happening in London, in England. And this is a huge European conference bringing together lots of different people, lots of different talks are going on, all about game accessibility. I mean, the fact there is a conference around that tells you a lot in itself. I mean, this is a huge event. It's happened around the world. This event happening in London. And of course, this is the same organization behind the Game Accessibility Conference Awards, which we reported on earlier in the year on our show, on our daily show. But I bring up this topic today for that reason, because I think it's a good chance to revisit. And it's always, I think, important to revisit this topic. Because, look, when we've done this on the radio show, we don't get much in the way of response. We don't get people getting in touch and talking about their experience. And I think it's for the same reason I have, which is the hesitance to go and buy the console to try this on the hope that one or two games might be accessible. But someone we've spoken to recently, well-known face in the world of accessible gaming, that is Sightless Kombat, also known as Ben Breen. He now works for the RNIB as their accessible gaming champion. And he has been talking to us recently about what his role is, but also talking about the state of game accessibility in 2024. The question is it up to scratch enough for us as blind people?
I think what we're seeing now is kind of the evolution of it. So we're still seeing games that are coming out with, very little in the way of accessibility, particularly for gamers without sight. But that's, unfortunately, that's a truth that we've come to acknowledge, me and so many others, that this will probably happen because, of course, accessibility for various levels of sight loss has been covered over the years, but gaming without sight is still a relatively unknown concept to most people. But as people are realizing, this game's done stuff well, they're learning from that, which is usually a good start. And it's mostly just a matter of conveying any flaws as a thing that a future game could work on, unless, of course, the current game can resolve it. And, the developers have said, we're going to resolve X, Y, and Z. So it's an interesting point to be at, because we're seeing accessibility becoming more and more commonplace for gamers without sight by degrees. But by the same token, feedback channels still need to be there, of course. There needs to be availability of playtests and consultancy opportunities worldwide, definitely, so that many people who want to lend their voice to these discussions and give obscure ideas that might not have appeared before the airing that they might need, because those ideas might be the one tiny little innovation that might resolve a load of issues, for instance. So we're seeing a lot of progress, but it's still slow.
Yeah, I mean, that was a great example, really, of what I was saying before about hitting that tipping point. We've seen this so many times when it comes to certain areas learning about and becoming accessible. It takes time. We saw it with smartphones, for example, and then the apps in the App Store, wherever it may be, Android, iPhone, Apple TV, wherever, you start to see people saying, I want to be able to use this stuff. Then you see the developers or manufacturers sort of responding to that, and it's slow. It's painfully slow. And I think it's the same when it comes to gaming. We are starting to see that accessibility starting to take hold, but still, for the majority of us, we still think that games, for the most part, accessibility really isn't baked in enough, but we are getting there.
And one game in particular, which I think, and rightly so, has had a huge amount of exposure in the past 6 months to a year, is Forza Motorsport, a game which, it's a racing game. It's all about driving. You would not think this is a game that would be something we could even think about playing. How would that even be possible? Well, I got the chance to catch up with Ross Minor, who's been playing this game now for almost a year. And let's just say he's been loving every single minute of it.
This is the very first racing game that is completely accessible to blind gamers from the ground up. There may be like racing games in the past that you could kind of play and stuff like that, but like this is straight up like the fully through and through accessible experience. And that's what makes it so exciting for me, because before I was blinded as a kid, I loved playing racing games. And after I went blind, I was like, well, this is video games as a whole were just very difficult to play, but especially racing games. And so when I found out that this game was coming out, I was like, just over the moon. I bought the game, like the premium edition. So I got like 5 days early access before it came out. And then I streamed it on Twitch. And the thing is that like, it's difficult at first. You or others may know that like with accessible products, with assistive technology, there's often a learning curve. And that's really no different with video games, especially like the more complex the mechanics are. And so the first time streaming on Twitch, I always like to say that I was literally driving like a blind person. But then like a week or so later, I'm getting noticeably considerably better. And the thing is that like I haven't had a ton of time to play as much as other people, but with that aside, I would consider myself an average driver, because there's an entire Forza Discord of blind drivers, and they are just out of this world. Like they are tearing it up on the track. Like they are frequently competing alongside sighted players online and things like that. Like they are so good, and I'm like, I am not there, but so that just goes to show just the variety of skill levels and just kind of what blind people can do when they harness these accessibility features. There are a lot of sound cues, I'll say, that kind of work all in tandem to make this all work. The car engine sound follows the optimal racing line. And so when you are to the left of the line, your car will be the sound of your car engine will pan to the left in the stereo field, and vice versa on the right side. And then you basically have to turn in the direction. I mean, it gets a little more complicated here, because I think the default is that you turn in the direction where you hear the car, but for me, like that's not how my brain works, and so I invert the sound. And so I imagine like pulling the car back onto the optimal racing line. But yeah, and so like that's how you know where you're supposed to go. And then there are a bunch of other supplementary audio cues. First being, there are cues for the track limit. So like if you're getting close to the left edge of the track, like a beeping sound will begin to play, and then as you get closer to it, it will beep faster and faster until it's just a solid beep. And same on the right side. Then you have, you have sounds for when you are approaching a turn, and this kind of just allows you to prepare how fast you want to go through the turn, how you want to position yourself for the turn, things like that. Then as you're going through the turn, there are 3 nodes, so to say. So the beginning of the turn, the peak or like the apex of the turn, and then finally the straightaway or like pulling out of the turn. And so the first 2 beeps that play are the same pitch to kind of let you know where you are in the turn. And then the third beep is a higher pitch, letting you know like, all right, you are out of the turn. You can kind of floor it again. And so that's really, really helpful. There's a sound cue for when you're approaching a turn and you're going too fast. So the game will tell you like, hey, you need to slow down or like you will absolutely spin out right now. And I personally find that one really useful. Then there are sounds for when you, for whatever reason, may be facing the wrong way on the track. Sometimes you'll spin out and your car will kind of end up in the wrong direction. So that's really nice. And then those are most of the navigational ones that I can remember. Then there are kind of like a few more supplementary ones, like a sound for when like AI has taken over your car to kind of like lead you into the pit, or a sound to let you know like what gear you're on if you're driving in manual, things like that. But those are the main sound cues. I literally feel like I'm forgetting one, but I don't believe I am.
Wow, I mean, there's so many he mentions there. If you have missed any out, then wow, that would be even more impressive, actually, because it just shows how much thought has gone into this game to make it as accessible as possible. Now, that game does excite me for that very reason. I mean, Ross is totally blind, and he is able to drive that car, as he says, like a sighted person.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we need, right? It's that tipping point of this is the thing that really makes me, as a visually impaired person, want to go out and spend money on that gaming console. You need something. You need that killer app, that killer device, the killer game. Yeah. You could argue I first started hearing about accessibility really with the game The Last of Us. That's when I first started to hear and take accessibility seriously in what I call mainstream game console gaming. And it's thanks to these kind of games where the effort has been put in to make those features accessible that you think, actually, we are getting somewhere.
Yeah. Of course, there's one game, though, which I would love to see being more accessible, and that is Grand Theft Auto. We have been waiting patiently for Grand Theft Auto 6 to come out, and I kind of thought this would be the time we'd get an accessible version. So I asked someone who might know, that is our good friend Steve Saylor, the blind gamer. He is well tuned into this stuff, right? He knows his onions when it comes to accessibility in gaming. And I thought he might get some inside information on this. So that's the question I put to him. Will Grand Theft Auto 6 be accessible?
Not yet. I think it is definitely too early to know, at least at this point. Rockstar is very good at being able to keep their cards close to the chest. There's been rumors for years about what Rockstar was making as far as like their next Grand Theft Auto game. And for right now, now that we've only had we just had the one trailer basically that has come out and took the internet by storm. That's pretty much the only official announcement we've ever had in the basically 6 years since, or actually even over 10 years ago since Grand Theft Auto 5 came out. So Rockstar has I have a pretty good idea that potentially there might be some more accessibility in there. I mean, they have been, Rockstar is pretty good at being able to sort of try to be able to keep up with sort of current modern trends, but also adding their own style into it. I don't know whether it'll be accessible. They don't have a big, huge track record as of yet. But I do hope that they do have, definitely make it more accessible, especially for those who would enjoy Grand Theft Auto Online, or even just the new sort of thing that popped up from Grand Theft Auto, which which is Grand Theft Auto Roleplay, which people are jumping into private servers and basically like role playing the world within GTA as their own avatar, and that's been amazing to be able to see too. So nothing really, no news or no information as of yet, but I'm sure when Rockstar's ready to talk about it, they will.
Yeah, well, I hope they do. I want Grand Theft Auto 6. I honestly think if they brought out Grand Theft Auto 6 and it was accessible, that would be the day I buy some kind of console.
That's interesting. I still think of the overhead view when I think of Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah,
probably the last time I could.
On.
Yeah, exactly, with minis and things. Yeah, again, it's going back to that killer app, and a name like Grand Theft Auto becoming accessible again just pushes accessibility into the limelight even more. But I don't know. I think they've got a bigger problem than even that, and that is our perception of gaming when you can't see any of the visuals. I'm still hesitant. I mean, there's a bit of a fine line that we're walking here, because I don't want to put the money up for a game console and then testing these games in the first place, unless there's a majority of the games that are accessible. And then secondly, am I getting the same experience when I'm playing it by audio cues that I sort of reminisce about as when I was a gamer, when I could see the screen, Well,
I think this as well. I kind of wonder sometimes it's easier to play new games you don't know, because then you don't know what you're not seeing. Whereas it's different if you've played the game before. You've got a sense of what this game is like. It's a bit like watching a movie, isn't it, with audio description now, when you know what it was like when you watched it.
And you can picture it in your head, almost every scene, right? If it's a movie you particularly love and you've seen it.
Or you think to yourself, goodness, I didn't know that was even in that scene. I had no idea. True. I didn't know why everyone was laughing at that particular the moment. I want to ask you this, because just before we go, I want to ask you about computers, because we always talk about consoles and we focus on consoles. But, I mean, computers are accessible, right? So if you buy a PC, and obviously we'd be talking a gaming PC or a decent gaming PC. How good is that? I mean, I'm assuming this accessibility, and this is just me not knowing anything, is the accessibility in these games, is it capable or available within the games on, say, Xbox via PC?
It's a very good question. And again, I don't know personally, because I've given up on games. But I wouldn't see why not. If it was... Unless it's relying on any of the system-level accessibility features, which I don't believe it will, maybe the screen reader, there should be absolutely no reason why all the accessibility features aren't standalone. They should be in the game, and you could play it on any platform. That's a very good point. I just don't know anymore. I haven't looked into PC gaming in the longest time.
Interesting. Okay, well, look, tell us your thoughts in the comments below, of course. You can type in your comments. You just type them in your little keyboard. You go
little keyboard. That's nice.
Little tiny, or a big keyboard. Depends. They're all tiny now. We actually need to have a conversation about keyboards again, because it's getting ridiculous. I've got so many things I want to say about keyboards. It's an absolute disgrace. Anyway, we will talk about that another time. Also, keep in touch, feedback at doubletaponair.com. You can drop us a voice message as well by calling 1-877-803-4567. We'll be back again soon for another Double Tap on YouTube. Thank you, Shaun.
Thank you, Stephen. Bye-bye.